You're about to witness the boldest move Harley's made in over a decade, yet no one's saying a word. After years of chasing chrome and bleeding riders, Harley just dropped a price bomb no one expected. Is this redemption or collapse? Why now? Why so quiet? And most importantly, what if it fails? Stick around, everything rides on this. What's happening? No press release, no hype, just one number, dropped like a thunderclap into the silence. $9,999. That was the new price of the Harley Davidson Nightster, a figure that in one instant shattered years of luxury branding, tradition, and assumptions. It wasn't accompanied by a national ad campaign, no celebratory tone from the company, no CEO standing on a stage declaring the return of grit and rebellion, just a simple number on a product sheet. And it said more than any marketing ever could. For years, Harley Davidson had drifted into the luxury lane, its bikes priced to impress investors more than everyday riders. Entry-level models stretched beyond $17,000, while mid-tier cruisers like the Softail Deluxe and the lowrider ST crept toward the $30,000 mark once dealer fees and accessories were added. To many blue-collar riders, the Harley dream had become just that. A dream, distant and untouchable. And then in one quiet move, the company cut through all the noise and dropped a price tag that didn't just surprise people, it stunned them. What made the move even more intriguing was the silence surrounding it. There was no fanfare, no narrative to shape the conversation, no declaration that this was a return to Harley's roots. That vacuum led to a flood of speculation. Was this an act of contrition, a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding, or was it a tactical re-entry into a market Harley once ruled but long ignored? It didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a white flag dipped in chrome, an admission that something had gone very, very wrong. For years, Harley had built itself up as a symbol of power, rebellion, and American muscle. Its prices reflected that identity, selling not just motorcycles, but a lifestyle that cost as much as a car. But that strategy was cracking. Competitors were undercutting them with better value. Young riders were choosing affordable reliability over brand legacy, and loyalists, they were tired of being priced out of their own culture. The Nightster's price drop was not a marketing stunt. It was a signal flare. The company wasn't trying to start a conversation. It was trying to stop the hemorrhaging. And yet, in trying to stop the bleeding, Harley accidentally lit a fire. Riders who had sworn off the brand were suddenly paying attention. Industry insiders whispered about internal panic. Dealerships, caught off guard, scrambled to restock inventory. But this wasn't about affordability. It was about avoiding collapse. Red, white, and reassembled. Harley Davidson didn't move production overseas because it wanted to. It did it because it had to. As quietly as the Nightster price dropped, another truth sat just beneath the surface. Many of its parts, and in some cases entire models, were no longer being built on American soil. Thailand had become Harley's quiet partner in survival. And for those paying attention, the message was clear. Patriotism had become a luxury the company could no longer afford. The decision to shift key production to Thailand was born out of a perfect economic storm. Tariffs made exporting bikes from the United States to the European Union prohibitively expensive, sometimes increasing the cost by up to 100%. Labor costs continued to rise and Harley's core markets were shrinking. A motorcycle that cost $15,000 to build in Wisconsin could be made for nearly 40% less overseas. And in a globalized marketplace, that difference could mean life or death for a brand already on the ropes. Critics cried betrayal. Supporters called it strategy. But inside Harley's boardroom, the decision was anything but ideological. It was survival math. American factories had become symbols of pride, but also of inefficiency. Thailand offered a streamlined supply chain, access to emerging markets, and a way to regain control over profit margins. Harley wasn't alone. Companies like Apple and Levi's had long shifted large portions of their production abroad. But those companies didn't wrap themselves in flags. They didn't sell identity as part of their product. Harley did, and that's what made the shift feel so jarring. The company had built its empire on the promise of American steel, American grit, and American rebellion. And yet its salvation came from overseas labor, global assembly lines, and tariff loopholes. This wasn't about abandoning values. It was about not going bankrupt. The company faced a decision that many modern brands encounter in the age of global trade. Hold the moral line and risk extinction, or adapt to the brutal logic of capitalism. Harley chose the latter, and for many that choice changed the meaning of the brand itself. Still, the move worked. On paper, margins improved, costs dropped, the Nightster could now be priced competitively. But the damage was cultural, not just financial. The rider who once believed they were buying into an American legacy now had to question whether that legacy still existed. And even with the numbers back in their favor, the culture was slipping away. We dug through dealer data, factory shifts, and real rider feedback. So if you want truth, not spin, hit subscribe and ride with us. LiveWire. Harley Davidson once dreamed of the future and named it LiveWire. The company's first all-electric motorcycle was supposed to be a revolutionary leap. It was sleek, modern, and entirely silent. Priced at nearly $30,000, it was positioned as a luxury tech product rather than a gritty piece of rebellion. And in doing so, Harley alienated almost everyone who ever cared about the brand. The LiveWire didn't fail because it was electric. It failed because it was disconnected. It didn't just lack sound, it lacked soul. Harley was trying to become Tesla, but forgot that its entire identity was built on the roar of the engine, the smell of oil, the feeling of controlled chaos between your legs. The LiveWire offered speed, but none of the ritual, none of the poetry. To Harley's core audience, it felt like the company had left them behind. Riders who grew up on the echo of a V-twin engine couldn't relate to something that felt like a Bluetooth speaker on wheels. And the new audience Harley hoped to attract, they were already riding zero bikes or waiting for more practical urban electric solutions, not $30,000 experiments from a legacy brand. The contrast with the Nightster couldn't be clearer. One is silent, premium, and disconnected from heritage. The other is loud, raw, and priced like it wants riders back. The irony is brutal. In trying to leap ahead with LiveWire, Harley almost rode itself out of the future. Only by going back to its roots with the Nightster did it remember what had made it iconic to begin with. Can a brand built on rebellion go silent? But while Harley chased tomorrow, it forgot who was still waiting today. The badge that doesn't mean what it used to. For decades, owning a Harley Davidson was more than a purchase. It was a statement, a declaration of loyalty to American steel, American sweat, and American storylines. The badge on the tank didn't just represent a brand, it represented a promise. That what you were riding was born from Milwaukee grit and flyover pride. That the rumble in your chest came from a machine built by the same hands that built the towns you passed through. But if you lift the seat today, the truth looks different. Heart stamped, made in Thailand. Electronics traced back to factories in Mexico. Critical components sourced from China. The final assembly may happen in the United States for select models, but the soul of the machine, the guts, the chips, the wires, has gone global. And for riders who built their identity around buying American, that change is not just disappointing, it is devastating. This is not about xenophobia, it is about authenticity. It is about a promise that Harley made and quietly broke. When a brand wraps itself in flags, leans into patriotism, and markets rebellion in red, white, and blue, it sets a standard, one that cannot coexist with supply chains that read like international departure boards. You cannot sell rebellion wrapped in stars and stripes when the engine was born across the ocean. The erosion didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, quietly, cloaked in strategic decisions and global efficiency reports. But its effects are visible. Midwestern towns that once roared with production now sit in silence. Local factories shuttered, jobs lost, and pride displaced. For every Harley made in Thailand, there is a town in Ohio or Wisconsin or Michigan that lost a piece of its livelihood. And the riders feel it too. Those who once believed that buying a Harley was a way of buying back into America now feel betrayed. Because when the badge loses its meaning, everything else falls with it. The pride, the stories, the justification for paying more, the reason people chose Harley over cheaper alternatives in the first place. Now many are asking, what is left? If the price is higher and the product no longer carries the same patriotic weight, what exactly are they buying? And more importantly, who are they buying it for? And when the badge fades, the soul goes with it. And this wasn't just about bikes anymore. It was about being seen. Ghost town showrooms. Saturdays used to be sacred in Harley showrooms. The smell of coffee and rubber, the sounds of engines firing up, test rides rolling out, and casual browsers talking torque. It was not just a place to shop, it was a place to belong. Dealerships were community hubs, not retail chains. But now, Walk into many Harley dealerships and the noise is gone. The energy has vanished, and what remains is a hollow echo of what used to be. Sales staff stand idle, rearranging gloves or polishing helmets out of boredom. Managers offer free jackets, discounted service packages, even giveaways just to bring someone, anyone, through the door. Rows of brand new bikes untouched for weeks. Dust slowly gathering on chrome that once turned heads. The financial strain is brutal. Floor plans, dealer loans for inventory accumulate interest while the bikes sit unmoved. Some dealers report weekends without a single test ride. Others have stopped ordering new models altogether. Behind the scenes, conversations grow more desperate. Many feel abandoned by corporate. Headquarters continues pushing premium bikes and electric concepts, while the local market asks for grit, price cuts, and something real. Some dealership owners are speaking out, first in whispers, now in public forums. They talk about dwindling foot traffic, confused branding, and a customer base that no longer knows what Harley stands for. One dealer in Texas put it bluntly, "The bikes didn't get worse. The bond did." That line sums it up. This was never just a retail crisis. It was the physical manifestation of Harley's identity collapse. Because the dealership was always more than a sales floor. It was the last handshake between brand and believer. And with the showrooms empty, Harley heard something it never had before. Silence. From symbol to cautionary tale. There was a time when Harley Davidson stood as a pillar of American strength, an industrial icon woven into the fabric of working-class pride. But over the last few years, that symbol has started to fray. What once roared with certainty now sputters through uncertainty, not only in cultural terms but in economic terms as well. The cracks began as whispers, small dips in quarterly reports, slight reductions in market share, but soon those whispers became sirens. Harley Davidson, one of the most legendary names in American manufacturing, had begun its descent from timeless icon to financial cautionary tale. The collapse was not a single catastrophic moment. It unfolded over quarters, disguised as industry fluctuations and temporary slowdowns. But by the time the numbers told the truth, the damage was already done. Unit sales in the United States, Harley's strongest market, had fallen steadily year after year. Plant closures were no longer hypothetical. They were real. Entire shifts were canceled and workers with 20 years under their belts were sent home with severance packages and empty futures. Stock prices dipped, then dipped again, then plunged. Analysts downgraded Harley's rating, citing irrelevance in modern consumer markets and a failure to adapt with discipline. The fallout extended beyond Milwaukee's boardroom. Suppliers who had relied on Harley orders began cutting staff. Tool and die shops, paint facilities, raw metal producers, each one bled in tandem. Small towns that had once pulsed with pride at supplying Harley parts watched their economies slow to a crawl. Local diners lost their breakfast rush. Hardware stores saw fewer bulk orders. Riding gear shops began closing their doors for good. The loss was no longer abstract. It was visible in every empty parking lot and every closed bay door. What made this collapse so uniquely painful was that it mirrored something deeper than economic decline. It mirrored the emotional withdrawal of an entire riding culture. As the sales vanished, so did the stories. The fathers and daughters who used to bond over chrome. The veterans who gifted Harleys to their grandkids. The weekend warriors who once rode in packs down country highways. It wasn't just a brand that was fading. It was a ritual, a rhythm, a roar that once echoed across a nation. One Wall Street analyst said it best. Harley isn't failing because it can't make bikes. It's failing because it forgot who was riding them. And while Harley bled value, its rivals seized opportunity. Indian didn't win loud. It won quiet. As Harley Davidson scrambled to stabilize, Indian Motorcycles was busy doing something altogether different. It was building, slowly, quietly, patiently, and without the kind of marketing pyrotechnics Harley had once used to dominate headlines. Indian didn't need viral launches or overpriced electric experiments. It didn't even need to call attention to itself. All it needed was a consistent product, a clear identity, and a quiet understanding of what Harley had left behind. While Harley bet on premium pricing and glossy rebrands, Indian kept the conversation grounded. Their Scout line became a whisper-turned-roar. The Scout 60, in particular, emerged as a favorite among new riders and veterans alike. With V-twin torque, approachable styling, and a price tag that didn't require a second mortgage, Indian created something rare in modern motorcycling: accessibility without compromise. They didn't flood dealerships with hype. They let the ride do the talking, and people listened. Online forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube reviews began to shift tone. I traded my Harley for an Indian, and I'm not looking back. The Scout feels like what the Sportster used to be. I wanted a Harley, but Indian gave me something better. These weren't endorsements from paid influencers. These were everyday riders who had waited too long for Harley to listen and decided to ride elsewhere. Indian didn't just create better bikes, it created a better emotional contract. While Harley sold legacy, Indian sold presence. While Harley leaned into nostalgia, Indian leaned into performance. And while Harley's pricing model pushed customers out, Indian quietly welcomed them in. Their dealerships didn't feel like gated communities. They felt like options. Indian didn't market the dream, it delivered it. And just when Harley thought it had seen it all, Japan struck again. The return of Japan's silent precision. The 1980s were defined by one of the greatest shakeups in motorcycling history. Japan's rise and Harley's defensive panic. That story, it turns out, was only the prologue. Because now, decades later, Japan has returned to the cruiser battlefield. Not to compete with Harley, but to make Harley irrelevant. Honda's Rebel 1100 rewrote the entry-level rulebook. Smooth, powerful, reliable, and underpriced. It didn't need to scream heritage. It simply worked. It offered dual-clutch transmission for newer riders, a low-slung body for shorter riders, and an engine that outperformed bikes double its price. It didn't need nostalgia. It had usability. Yamaha's Bolt brought urban aggression and minimal design. No excess. No weight, just raw power and clean aesthetics that felt more Brooklyn than Daytona. Riders who didn't want to buy into the Harley lifestyle or Harley's loan payments found a home in the Bolt's simplicity. Kawasaki's Vulcan S completed the trio with a modular seating system that fit riders of all shapes and sizes, and a parallel twin engine that delivered strong torque without punishing your spine. It was ergonomics meets engineering, tuned for real-life riders instead of mythological ones. And then came the generational shift. Generation Z and younger millennials didn't care about legacy. They cared about form, function, and price. They grew up with smartphones, not spoked wheels. They wanted their bikes to work, not worshipped. For them, quiet reliability mattered more than loud rebellion. These weren't flashy revivals. These were revolutions designed in silence. Japan had studied Harley's every mistake and corrected all of them. Now Harley had one shot left and no room for mistakes. The blueprint to come back loud. It is not too late. That is the quiet truth Harley Davidson has yet to fully embrace. Beneath all the stock collapses, showroom silence, and culture loss lies a path, worn, cracked, and forgotten, but still walkable. The blueprint to save Harley is not a mystery. It has been hiding in plain sight, etched into the success stories of brands that remembered who they were. Ducati did it, and if Harley has the courage to follow the same path, they can do it too. Ducati was once adrift, an Italian brand adored by a niche group of purists, but increasingly irrelevant to younger modern riders. Then came the Scrambler. It was not revolutionary. It did not try to be. What it offered was something far more valuable: familiarity. A stripped-down, classic-looking machine that prioritized experience over specs. It was fast, simple, beautiful, and brutally honest. Ducati did not chase trends. It remembered its soul, and when it did, riders returned in droves. Ducati did not need to invent a future. It only had to reconnect with its past. Harley's equivalent move is clear. Lean into affordability, not luxury. The $9,999 Nightster was not just a pricing decision. It was a declaration. That number sent a shockwave because it reminded people of a time when Harley was attainable, when riding was for the working class, not the investor class. If Harley wants to earn its base back, sub-$10,000 models need to become the rule, not the exception. Permanently. No marketing gimmicks, no limited time releases, real consistent affordability. And with that affordability must come attitude. Riders do not need 10 screens or digital dashboards. They want thunder. They want something they can wrench, personalize, and ride into the dirt. But affordability is only one leg of the comeback stool. The second is visibility, not just in terms of media but geography. Harley needs to bring its soul back home. It does not need to relocate every assembly line to Wisconsin. That ship has sailed, but it can make symbolic moves that resonate deeply. American steel badges, transparent parts sourcing, campaigns that show Harley investing in small-town America. Even just returning to club-sponsored events and sponsoring grassroots rides again could move the needle. Riders want to feel seen. Harley has the network. It simply needs to use it. All the pieces are on the table. Ducati proved it. Harley has the blueprint, but even if they build the perfect machine, affordable, gritty, and unmistakably American, will the riders who walked away ever come back? Because the real damage Harley suffered wasn't mechanical, it was spiritual. And that leads us to the bigger question that brands across America are asking. Bud Light, Disney, and the mirror that shattered. Harley's collapse did not happen in a vacuum. In fact, it mirrors a broader American pattern. Iconic brands losing the plot and alienating the very people who built them. This isn't just a Harley story, it's a Bud Light story, a Disney story, a Target story. The symptoms may differ, but the diagnosis is the same. Whiplash branding, an identity crisis delivered overnight. Start with Bud Light. One marketing decision, singular, sudden, and disconnected from its base, set off a cultural wildfire. It wasn't the politics that shocked people. It was the speed of the pivot, the sense that something sacred had been flipped without warning. Longtime customers did not just boycott, they revolted. Stores were left with full shelves. Memes became protest tools. The backlash was not ideological, it was psychological. Customers felt like they were waking up in someone else's brand. Target's story runs parallel. The company tried to champion inclusivity, but misjudged the emotional landscape of its shoppers. Displays were rearranged. Campaigns backtracked. Executives scrambled to explain a pivot they had not prepared to defend. Target forgot that branding is not just about values, it is about timing, trust, and emotional rhythm. When you drift too far from the heartbeat of your audience, they stop hearing you. Disney too found itself in a storm, not because of its message, but because of the mismatch between message and memory. For decades, Disney was the cultural embodiment of family-first entertainment. When that image blurred, the reaction wasn't about values. It was about a perceived betrayal of something deeply personal. The backlash was not universal, but it was enough to expose how fragile brand identity has become in the modern age. Now look back at Harley. It followed the same trajectory. One moment it was freedom, grit, and rebellion. The next it was pricing itself into irrelevance, shifting to electric bikes that look like smartphones and speaking in the language of strategic realignment. Riders didn't see themselves anymore. And when people no longer see their reflection in a brand, they don't complain, they leave. This isn't about whether brands should evolve. Of course they should. But change without continuity is chaos. Loyalty cannot be bought with hashtags and hollow campaigns. It is built through clarity and earned through time. Because this isn't just about marketing, it's about who you are. And that's something the strongest brands never forget. And if Harley wants to survive, it must first remember who it was. Which brings us to the final chapter, the one yet to be written, the road ahead. The $9,999 Nightster is more than just a motorcycle. It is a referendum, a hinge point, a symbol of whether Harley Davidson is willing to return to the values that made it legendary. This is not about horsepower or exhaust notes. It is about identity. It is about the moment where a company asks itself, do we remember why we mattered? Because this isn't just a comeback attempt. It's a test of whether Harley will double down on affordability, community, and soul, or slip back into polished chrome illusions made for shareholder slideshows. The Nightster could be the beginning of a new era, or the last breath of a brand that waited too long to wake up. Riders are watching. Dealers are waiting. The world is listening. What Harley does next will decide whether it remains a symbol of freedom or becomes a cautionary tale told in business schools. This isn't just a new model. It's Harley's last chance to roar. So what do you think? Does the Nightster mark a real return or just another marketing move in disguise? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want more unfiltered breakdowns of the auto and motorcycle world, hit subscribe and stay loud.